Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up, the WNW 197 for Friday, July 3rd, 2015. And I'm going to give you a bit of a crop report. I know it looks bizarre that I have an empty field in the middle of summer when everything ought to be just, looking all really like, this. But I'm going to tell you about the drought and the flooding and the water and non-water at the end of this report. But let's start with Greece. I mean, headlines all over the place. I mean, if you listen to financial news, it's not really a problem. The U.S. Brought to its knees with the debt crisis, and if it was only Greece, as I've said many times, we wouldn't have that big of a deal. But there's a big deal. Also, they've asked for this referendum. Should they stay in the EU, Greece, or should they leave? Should I stay? Should I go? It's the Clash song. Remember that song from way back? Should I stay or should I go now? I say it's not going to make any difference, but the IMF and the EU, they say, hey, no debt talks until you find out whether or not you're going to stay in the EU or not. And as I said, it's not going to make any difference. Why? Because they have to have big cuts. They're living beyond their means and they can't print money. Well, I guess they can print money, but at some point that money's no good. Not like the EU, the central bank, can print money. I mean, they are a satellite nation, Greece. And either way, they have massive austerity, and then they have, this crushing debt for generations, kind of controlled chaos, or they have total chaos and no debt because they'll just, default on it, and then who knows what'll happen? They'll be asking for help if they do that from Russia and China, and likely those folks will give it to them. And that therein it lies the bigger problem with Greece. But whether it's Greece or Puerto Rico, the story is the same. Unpayable debt. I mean, how reckless, how irresponsible the folks in Puerto Rico, a 3.5 million population and $75 billion in debt. You mean they didn't realize it was a problem 5 years ago? It didn't realize there was going to be a problem 2 years ago? How about last year? Oh no, it's a problem right now. Why is it a problem right now? Because right now is when we find out that they've run out of other people's money. See, it wasn't a problem a year or 2 or 5 years ago or 10. You could still borrow money. And now they want to default. They want to use something that cities in the continental U.S., and this is a territory, Puerto Rico, still a territory of the United States, and they want to use something called Title IX or Chapter 9, which is we're going to default. We're going to just wipe this away in a bankruptcy. Cities and cities use that and things like that. States, I don't know how many states have used that, but Puerto Rico wants to use Chapter 9. They want to just default on $75 billion in debt. You think this doesn't make a difference to you? You think it doesn't make a difference to what happens in Greece? People have gotten used to, oh, it's sovereign debt. Oh, it'll never default. Oh, a municipal debt will never default. Well, this is the problem. This is going to reprice interest rates in the market, and the Federal Reserve and the IMF aren't going to have much choice in this when people start demanding money. Whoa, I was in this bond fund, I lost money, and one of the people that defaulted was Puerto Rico or Greece or whatever. This is how it comes apart at the edges. And listen, Puerto Rico, Greece, they're the same as everybody else. It's just happening to them right now, but this is a precursor to what's going to happen in the rest of the world. I was at a parts store here, where I'm at in the Midwest right here, and I asked the guy, "Do you think you this? We have 18 trillion and counting of debt. Do you think you owe part of that?" I get this look like, "Well, no." "Well, yes, you owe part of that, and you're going to pay one way or the other." And the folks in Puerto Rico, they just can't print money. I was listening to satellite radio, and Peter Schiff, smart guy, been a guest on this show, and I'll paraphrase, not an exact quote, but it's what he said. And he said, the problem with Puerto Rico is they can't print money. The U.S., we're monetizing our debt. Remember, John Williams said about 75% of the new issuance of debt, Treasury bonds, the new issue of Treasury bonds has been monetized. They're printing money to cover the debt. Well, Puerto Rico can't do that. Well, Greece can't do that. But at some point, you can only print money for so long, and nobody's going to believe in your money or your bonds. And that is the problem, and that's why we have basically fraud in the banking system, fraud in every aspect of the financial system, whether it's LIBOR rate rigging or forex currency rigging or the gold market currency. They're phony accounting. They're desperate. I've got Gregory Mannarino up next week, who said the market would top out. Last time he was on about a month ago, and he also has some very unusual views on peak debt. We'll be talking to him coming up. You'll want to see GregoryMannarino.com. He just thinks that they're desperate, that what's going on is going to look even crazier because they're desperate to kind of try to hold this together. More phony numbers. I'm just talking about the phony number, 5.3 unemployment rate. You have, financial journalists coming on, the Fox and CNN and whatever. They don't ever really drill down that, that these 230,000 jobs created were offset by 430,000 people leaving the job market, leaving the workforce. And all these jobs created are mostly part-time jobs, low-wage jobs, but they're jobs. You would think they're jobs at IBM and Bank of America and HSBC. HSBC, a few weeks ago, announced they were laying off 50,000 people through layoffs and selling off parts of their company. 50,000. That's not growth. And they never talk about that the massive amount of people leaving the workforce, to the point it's at a record. It's at 1970, what, 6 or 7, 78 lows. It's at near 40-year lows. It's 93.6 million people no longer counted. And the jobs created are these phony, part-time Obamacare skirting jobs. 5.3% unemployment rate. It's it's no longer in the workforce. 93.6 million, and it just goes with phony numbers equal phony recovery. We don't have a recovery on Main Street. We just don't have a recovery. If I had John Williams on him, last week, and he said that he told me off camera, we're still at about 23% underemployed, unemployed. If you calculated the unemployment rate the way Bureau of Labor Statistics did it, 1994 and earlier, we'd have about a 23% underemployment rate. Unemployment, underemployment. And about 23%, and it's been in the 21, 22, 23% for the last, 6 or 7 years. It's been that way. We just don't have a recovery. That means we don't have a way to pay back this bond debt. That means we're going to have less and less people, more and more people with less and less money. The Bank of International Settlements, I thought this was very weird. They came out and warned that, in the next crisis, we're not going to be able, we'll be out of ammunition. They put this out, not somebody analyzing. The Bank of International Settlement, the central bank of central bankers, the BIS, put out that during the next, if there is another calamity, when there is another calamity, I don't know exactly how they said it, but they won't be able to, they'll be powerless. They're out of ammunition. I mean, really, we're at 0% interest rates effectively. They've printed trillions of dollars. The debt grew by, another 50% since the last crisis. It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. There's a quadrillion in over-the-counter derivatives. And Christine Lagarde, according to Gordon Long, knows all about derivatives. That's why she's at the managing director of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. But that's a weird thing. They warned about that, right? Isn't that bizarre? All of a sudden, they just came out. Nobody pressed them. They just came out with a little report saying they're not going to be able to fix the next crisis. Warning. And these is what's happening in Puerto Rico, what's happening in Greece. Listen, it's what's happening around the world. Unpayable debt. These people are just first. That's all. They're not any worse than anybody else. They're just first. And one other thing I wanted to say about Peter Schiff, he said, basically the people in Puerto Rico are actually better off than here in the United States. They just can't monetize the debt. They just can't monetize all this debt. But actually, Puerto Rico's books, if they lose the $75 billion in debt for the 3.5 million people, actually are doing better than the United States. But they just can't print the money and make it go away temporarily. And we've been just kicking this can down the road. What's going to happen with the referendum doesn't really make much difference. There's going to be trouble. They put it off a little longer. Fine. I'm still liking this fall for major calamity or major upheaval, major events happening this fall. Finally, I just want to talk to you about what's going on coast to coast, and I want to start. I want to start right here, and you just can't see this enough. This is the debt map. Here's Missouri. That's where I am now, right here. So here's Missouri. Not a lot of drought anywhere, but the West. Man, look at California. It's unbelievable. I mean, California over here. I mean, 100% of the state is in some sort of drought, and the dark red is absolutely critical, ground zero, terrible. The whole West out here is having water problems, but California and Western Nevada and all over California, serious trouble. One friend of mine said that he lives up on the border of Oregon and California, and they have a well. And they actually put a meter on a private well to make sure they didn't take out too much groundwater. From a farm up in the northern part of California. They have serious problems. And might I remind you, and I can't remind you enough, NASA came out in the middle of March and warned and gave a prediction that California only has about a year's worth of water left. That's about 8 months and counting. And, there's a lot of talk that, El Nino will bring a lot of water. Well, that's just, is hope categorized as a strategy? What has Jerry Brown been doing for the last, several years when he knew he had a problem that started 4 years ago, and it's not exactly a water plentiful state anyway? Why didn't he do something a couple of years ago? Why didn't Jerry Brown, the governor of California, do something last year? I guess he's just hoping that they'll get water for the 38 million people in California. Can you imagine the chaos when the taps and the spigots all over Los Angeles start, sand and brown water start coming out of them? Can you imagine the chaos? A state of 38 million people. It's absolutely unbelievable. It actually is unbelievable that this has gotten this bad this far. I suspect there'll be a mass migration out of California if El Nino doesn't dump lots and lots of water, and then there'll be mudslides and other problems, but still, they are having an extreme worst drought ever out in California. Finally, I just want to talk to you about that secret trade deal. The Trade Promotion Authority and also the TPP. That's the deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is one of the biggest pieces of legislation the Obama administration has gotten through, other than Obamacare. And he had the help and actually the spearheading of the Republican Party, with some major help from members of the Democratic Party, although most Democrats voted against it, and many Republicans voted against it. But still, you had John Boehner, Speaker of the House, you have Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, and they just pushed this thing through. So at the signing ceremony of this major piece of legislation, the secret trade deal that this is good for America. Oh, they're proud of it. Oh, we need to have trade. Where was Mitch McConnell? Where was John Boehner? Oh, they didn't make it to the signing ceremony. Oh, you mean you didn't make it to the secret trade deal signing ceremony? You mean you just missed that? One of the few pieces of legislation, and bipartisan legislation, that has made it through the House and the Senate in years, and you guys pushed heavily for it, and neither one of the majority leaders in the House or the Senate for the Republican Party didn't go to it? What does that say? And did I tell you that this is a secret deal? We don't even know what's in it. And the Republicans and the Democrats that voted for it ought to be ashamed of it. We can't find out for 4.5, 5 years? Unbelievable. Finally, I just wanted to tell you about this field behind me. It's brown. It should have beans, and you can't see it. The little sprigs behind me are beans that got too much water, actually flooding here, and also just up on top of the hills where there weren't any flooding, just way too much water. The seeds rotted in the ground here in Missouri. What the old saying in Missouri, belt high by the 4th of July. Well, look at this. This is huge. It's got, tassels on it. This is how some corn looks. It's over my head. This is over my head. But belt high by the 4th of July is the standard for corn, all over the Midwest. And some corn looks like this. Some fields look like this. Some fields got way too much water. Either they were flooded or they planted and they got soaked and the seeds rotted in the ground. The wheat, the winter wheat, you haven't heard about this. This is bizarre. I've had one farmer that told me, I've been farming all my life, what, 20, 30 years, and he said, I've never seen this before. It was so wet in June, record month in June in Missouri for rainfall. It was so wet that the wheat matured. It was ready to harvest. They couldn't get to it. It kept raining on it. And you know what happened? The seeds germinated and they sprouted on the plant in the field. The seeds sprouted, which meant the wheat was no good. So you may have gotten a wheat crop, but you got either nothing for it or very little for it, and that's another problem with all the water. But either it's feast, which is corn 6-7 feet tall, or you got beans that are this tall that ought to be this tall, or you have corn that's up to your thigh, which ought to be up at least up to your belt high by the 4th of July. And it's just more about the extreme weather. We have severe drought out west, particularly California, and record amounts of rainfalls, at least here in Missouri and parts of the Midwest in June. Absolutely a bizarre weather pattern taking shape to go along with the bizarre financial pattern that I think looks shakier and shakier every day. I'm Greg Hunter. That's the way I see it. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. It helps us out. And remember, fear not. Prepare yourself physically, mentally, and above all, prepare yourself spiritually. Fear not.